Hey guys, thanks for tuning in today. You'll see we're in a new setup right now. This is how we set up to record the next global big band album that we're doing. This is an album that I'm really excited about. We've got members of the band from all sorts of different countries and a bunch of incredible guest artists and guest soloists that are going to be on it, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, just to make sure that you catch that content as we release it. But today we're going to talk about a really important technique. I would even venture to say that it's the most important thing to practice, and it is probably one of the most neglected. That is simply just practicing chord tones and using chord tones in your solos. It should really be a vehicle for the melodicism and for the harmonic development of your playing, and so many people neglect it. So let's talk about how we can get into practicing chord tones and using chord tones in your playing so you can play better solos. Chord tones are so important, and you can even see in the transcriptions of jazz legends, if you're looking at a solo by Hank Mobley or Dexter Gordon or Charlie Parker or Sonny Rollins, you can see just by looking at the chord when it changes, you can see that they're always playing chord tones or anticipating a chord tone or suspending a chord tone. It is really the foundation of melodic soloing when you're playing through chord changes. But most importantly, getting into this technique is going to solve a lot of problems in your development. It's going to solve problems like getting lost in a song form when you're playing. It's going to solve problems like not being able to memorize chord changes. And it's going to solve the issue of not being able to outline harmony or play melodically through chord progressions. So with all that said, let's get into it. How do we go about practicing this technique so we can improve all these elements of our musicianship and play better solos and play better through chord progressions? And to get into this technique, we're going to check out two etudes that I've written over the chord progressions of the song Donna Lee. And both of these etudes are from a PDF package ebook that I just released with jazz lesson videos. That's called 30 Chord Tone Solo Etudes, and that ebook is focused on giving you a bunch of language that's valuable to practice and play through to incorporate this technique. And we've been getting a lot of really nice feedback on the PDF packages that we've been putting out, so I'm so glad that you guys are finding these to be valuable resources, helping you guys get better at your improvisation. I just wanted to share a couple of those. We had one from Alec Reyes. Alec says, Chad's download 67 pentatonic phrases is my current fave go-to exercise study source. You have lines based on the major and minor pentatonic scales and dominant scales, all 12 keys. This is gold for any player. Although I downloaded it months ago, the more I use it, the more I realize the value of this material. Thanks so much, Alec. I'm really glad you're enjoying the content. And then I hope I'm saying this right. This is from Musa Verogil. He said, hey Chad, I don't know where to start. This stuff is helping me so much. The standards combo package and this technique combo package improved my playing immensely. I'm so thankful. And so thank you to everyone who's downloaded this content. I'm so glad to hear that it's helping you all in your development. I have to say it's really fun to be able to put out a lot of content that I wish I had when I was developing my playing. And honestly, I still use it. One of the reasons why it's really great for me to create these resources is it also creates a valuable practice tool for myself. So I know I'm getting better with this content, and I'm glad to hear it's working for you guys too. And so there are two types of etudes that I wrote for every song form in this ebook. The first type is going to be a really valuable approach, and that's what I call chord tone workouts. So the etudes that are chord tone workouts are etudes that literally only use chord tones of every chord all the way through. And so that's going to be one of the most important ways of practicing chord tones. I'm sure a lot of you watching this video know how to figure out the chord tones of an F major 7 or an F minor 7 or an F dominant 7. Those three types of chords are about 80 to 90% of what you see in jazz standards. But then going beyond that, just because you know the notes that make up that chord doesn't mean that you can actually fluidly and fluently solo with those chord tones. So there are really 4 elements that you want to focus on in order to get really fluid with chord tones. One is going to be playing unique shapes, which means changing the order of the notes in the arpeggio or the order of the notes of the chord tones of the chord. So that means instead of just playing 1, 3, 5, 7, you want to be able to play 1, up to 5, down to 3, up to 7. Or you want to be able to start on the 7 below the root and then go up to the 3rd and then maybe up to the 5th and then down to the root from there. And so you want to be able to do these unique shapes when you're playing from chord to chord. You also want to be able to play chord tones throughout the full range of your instrument. It's one thing to just be able to do it in one octave, but you need to be able to do it in at least a couple octaves throughout the full range of your instrument. So both of these elements, the unique shapes and the full range of the instrument, they're really highlighted in the first type of etude in this book. Then the second etude gets really into connection. So that's going to be connecting from one chord tone to the other with diatonic connections or chromatic connections. Then lastly, you want to be able to have rhythmic variation in your use of chord tones. So mainly that's going to mean not just eighth notes, but also triplets. Triplets are like the most underutilized rhythm by developing improvisers. If you can start to get the hang of using triplets, especially with chord tones, it's really going to take your playing to the next level. So again, the first type of etude is what I like to call a chord tone workout. So that's what we're going to check out first. This is going to be a chord tone workout on Donna Lee. So again, there's going to be all sorts of different shapes, and it's going to use really the full range of the instrument. So check this out. This is going to be the chord tone workout, and we're going to talk about all the devices used in it after. All right, so right off the top, we see a unique shape. We start on the 7th, below the root, on the A flat major 7. And then from there, we go into the root and we skip up to the 5th. Then we step down to the 3rd, and we play the 5th, the 7th, and then the 3rd up on top. So already we've got the same chord tones in different octaves. Then you'll see a close connection from the last note of measure 1, that C concert, down into the A natural, the first note of the second measure. That close connection essentially means that we've just got tight voice leading from measure to measure when the chords change. And you'll also see that getting from the end of measure 2 into measure 3 when we have those diatonic steps down into the 3rd of the B flat 7. Now in this etude, you'll actually see that I had fun showing how melodic the 3rd degree of each chord is. And so if you look at each measure all the way until measure 9, you're going to see we're using the 3rd on the first beat of every measure when the chord changes. And you'll see a lot of variation in the shapes that we use. So measure 3, you'll see that we have a lot of upward motion. Then in measure 5, for instance, we have a lot of descending motion. And then of course we have a lot of arpeggios that use both ascending and descending motion within them. So if you look at measures 8 and 9, you'll see that we have a lot of variation in the shape there. Then if you skip down to measure 13, that's where you're going to start to see some rhythmic variation. We break up the rhythm a bit in measure 13 and 14. And then if you go down to the next line, then looking down at measure 17, you're going to see a lot of triplet usage. So that's going to be really hip, using all those triplets in measure 17, and then especially in measure 19 into 20. In measure 21 and 22, you'll actually see the use of the same exact arpeggio shape 2 measures in a row, just applied to 2 different chords. So that's going to be hip. Essentially, we are rhyming the same arpeggio shape, which is going to be a really good thing to utilize when you're playing through chord changes. All right, so again, that etude was just using chord tones all the way through. It was all 1, 3, 5, and 7, and then we would occasionally throw in a 9 there. But it's all chord tones all the way through. Now let's check out what happens when we do the next etude, which gets into more diatonic and chromatic connection. So it's not just the chord tones here. So first, let's check this one out and let's analyze it after. All right, so the first thing to note is we're not just using the thirds in the first few lines of this etude. So we're mixing it up big time. We start on the 7th, and then in the downbeat of measure 2, you're gonna see the root, and then we anticipate the third going into measure 3. So we do a chromatic connection here, and then we hit the third on the and of 4 instead of the root. Then we rest on the downbeat and we play the 5th, the 7th, the 9th, and then we get into a chromatic connection going from the end of measure 3 into measure 4. You'll see a nice chromatic enclosure there that lands on the 7th of B flat 7. Then check out every measure from here. We've got a ton of variation on what chord tones we're using. So measure 5, we start with the 7th. Measure 6, we've got the 5th. Then we've got the 3rd. Then we've got the 7th. Then we've got the 5th. Then we've got the 5th, the 7th, the 5th, the 3rd, the 3rd, the 7th, the 7th, the 5th, the 5th. All types of chord tones, lots of variation all the way through. And then of course, important to notice that we've got a lot of rhythmic variation, like in measure 9, and we've got all sorts of chromatic connections, enclosures, and chromatic approaches, like what you'll see in measure 11. But despite the fact that we see so much chromatic use and so many diatonic connections and rhythmic variation, we're still landing on chord tones all the way through. Every single measure either starts with a chord tone, or it anticipates a chord tone getting into the measure, or it suspends a chord tone like when it comes in a beat later on the 3rd on measure 18. So point being here that even when you're playing a lot of content, you want to always be grounded in the chord tones, or at least be able to be grounded in the chord tones, because having that technique down is going to make you be able to play so much more melodic and with a much deeper sense of harmony. If you want a resource for getting into this stuff, this Solo Etudes book is going to give you a lot of content for that. Each standard chord progression in the book has both types of etudes, so the chord tone workout and the etude that's more focused on connections. And if you want to grab the download this week, you can actually use coupon code JLV5, which will get you an additional $5 off the PDF package download. And of course, that's going to come with recordings of me playing every single etude, so you can play along with me to get a sense of my phrasing, and it also comes with backing tracks as well. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope you learned something. Definitely make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Give this video a like, and leave us a comment in the comment section below to let us know what you want us to get into in the next video. Always trying to give you content so you can learn how to move forward with your improvisation and provide you the best resources to help you get there. All right, guys, thanks again. I'll see you next time.